He has the best arm maybe in all of baseball.
Listen,
his 2022 stats overall last year, 115 games, 283 average, pretty good, 364 OBP, really darn good, 468 slug. Like, those are good numbers.
Of course they
are. For
are.
a shortstop?
And he's widely considered, not just by the Cardinals or by me, he's considered a really good prospect.
36 doubles. 8 triples, 12 bombs.
I mean, it's getting to the point where it's comedy now. Yes, the Cubs are better than the Cardinals.
That's silly. I'm not saying he's going to be great, but like, he was pretty dang good last year. He is a top, what is he, a top 50-ish prospect in Baseball America? He's number 48.
I think Steve the Skillet Head wakes up pissed.
You guys were both also talking that if he fails, he could be a pitcher. I mean, there's a lot of unknown about Masyn Winn. Penciling him in as like a shortstop in the next year to 2 years, I think, is a little far-fetched.
Well, here's the thing.
Not next year, I don't think.
What I've said is, and I know it kind of frustrates me. What I've said is, if you have this kid in the pipeline who's considered a prospect, I never said he's going to pitch both. It's just a fun thing. His stuff is nasty. His teammates told me that. Okay, he said, I'm a shortstop. So it's not realistic. Is he ever going to pitch? No. And I never said if it fails, he could be a pitcher. All I said was, if you have Tommy Edman, who, and maybe Arenado's crazy, and he's like me, he's lying. Tommy's not a good defensive player. Arenado said he's the best defensive player he's ever seen. You have a guy with a WAR of over 6 last year that you can put in shortstop, and then you have a regular spot for Donovan or Gorman, whoever reemerges or emerges, whatever. It makes sense to me that you don't want to spend a lot of money when you can handle it this way. And I've said, and I'll say it again, I wish they would have used the money they have to get another bat, which I think is something that could really shore up the lineup. So I don't think it's crazy or wrong, but I do have to restate my position because, and I'll have to put a misinformation tag on that. I never said Wynn's coming, he'll be there, but I never said
Here
that.
he comes.
I said he's a prospect that can do a lot of different things. He's really fast. He's really athletic. They believe he's going to be a really good defensive shortstop. No one knows if a young guy's going to hit, but he shows that he has tools. You have this guy coming. Right now you have Tommy Edman, who I think would be one of the front runners for a Gold Glove at shortstop.
I would just say that there's a portion of the fan base that has been told about certain players coming through the pipeline that have in some ways kept the team from trading or acquiring a player who has statistics at the major league level that are proven, and then when these young guys get to St. Louis, they haven't exactly flourished. So there's been a run of offensive players in particular that have gotten here and not necessarily met some of the hype that has been presented around them. And that's not, that's how it works. I get that's how it works. Like, not every prospect that you bill is, a 5-tool or 4-tool is going to turn out to be an all-star, but they haven't hit on one in a minute now.
And that's fair. And one of the reasons, if you recall early on in our discussion, why I think they needed another bat is because they're question marks, and if one of them will work out or two, you think chances are that one of these guys will hit. They have the tools, but I wanted a meat-eating bat.
Oh, the big boy.
Just in case that didn't work out. So, in a sense, we're kind of on the same page. We just express it differently, and I'm a rights holder.
Here's the other part of it, though. The funny thing is, some of the top-billed prospects who have been either hurt or maybe they do it for a year or underperform, it's some of the guys that we didn't talk about, like the 7th-round picks, like the Lars Nootbaars, the Tommy Edmans, and the Brendan Donovans that have come up and actually produced, again, small sample size for some of those guys, like Donovan, but have produced better than the Carlsons of the world. Like, did anybody think Brendan Donovan, year one, was going to get close to a 400 OBP
I predicted
and
that.
win a Gold Glove?
If you want to go check the clip.
With Masyn Winn, there's no pressure. Like, he doesn't have any type of 2023 Jordan Walker pressure. There's pressure for Jordan Walker to be up here at some point, and we're all even discussing, could he break camp with the team? Nobody's saying that about Masyn Winn. He played 86 games in AA last year. He should play a full season at AAA. If he's good, and he has to be good, then the natural progression is to be a big leaguer in 2024.
Do you think it's fair to have a wait-and-see attitude where you have Tommy Edman at short and you have a guy who had a great year last year, Donovan, at second base potentially, to wait on a shortstop, knowing that there's a chance the Winn guy could end up being your shortstop, move Tommy back to second, or who knows what happens at that point. Is that irrational?
Not at all. But it's also not irrational to say, hey, you should have signed Carlos Correa. I'd have been fine with that. But we kind of know the Cardinals, like every year we're like, get Verlander, get Correa. They never do that.
Ohtani.
They're not going to spend like that. They're just not.
And here's another thing.
I wish they did.
I think your point about pressure is well taken on Winn. Go down there, develop, see what happens. I don't think there's pressure on Walker because all they're saying is he's invited to spring training. He's going to get a good look because a lot of guys are going to the World Baseball Classic, but no one is penciling him yet because there's always adjustments. Now, this guy could be the kind of talent that just takes over. Who knows? But that's not – he's right now not projected, in their starting lineup anyway. So I'd really – if he puts pressure on himself, that's one thing. I don't think there's outside pressure except maybe from the fan base who believes this guy is a legit prospect.
You don't think it would be a letdown if Jordan Walker didn't appear in the big leagues in 2023?
At some point, but I don't think it's pressure to make the team out of spring
say that.
training. And if he comes up for a little bit, like any other prospect would, see how he does. I just don't think that's laden with pressure.
What do you think, Nate? What do you think is going to happen with Jordan Walker if you could throw a coin on it? You think he's going to be successful this year?
Oh, my God, I hope. If he's successful, it drastically changes the Cardinals' ability in the postseason. I mean, now you're talking about a team that could really make a run at one of these other teams that doesn't just have 2 or 3 big bats. They have 4. I mean, you look at the Phillies and the Padres and even the Dodgers. They've got a lineup that presents 4 legitimate lethal threats. So if Walker is here and playing every day, to me that tells me that his bat has been influential enough to deserve that spot. I also think when we talk about these things, like sometimes we can take them personal because like it feels like, I get, the Cardinals aren't going to go out and spend the money for these veteran free agents. That's not been their track record. But I do think that there is a portion of the fan base that still wishes that they would, and maybe they're unrealistic, but I don't think that anything in terms of debating which way they should operate is like an attack on someone's personal opinion about how the Cardinals should structure their team. Is that fair? Does that make sense?
No, but I like
attacking you.
But I like to.
I don't want Jimmy to feel like you're wrong. We joke about rights holders.
No, because I get on the text line, and it's not what not what I said. Like I've laid it out time and time again, but because it's become like a snowball going downhill, I said Kisner should be the guy. It's not. That's not what I said.
Right.
And I just think sometimes it gets I agree with all that. I also think and I know it's crazy, and I'm a rights holder, but I think Tyler O'Neill could be back to Tyler
arms
O'Neill
look big.
and be another big bat in that lineup.
Could
that
be.
Changes. But that's the whole thing. As I said, can he do that? Can Dylan Carlson get back on track offensively and stay on the field? Can Newpar do what he did in the second half and be? They could have a very good lineup. But are there question marks on each one of them? Yes.
They did last year. People forget that. I understand playoffs was different. They were top 3 in the National League last year.
Yeah.
Lineup. And here's the other thing about, I've said it a million times, I'd love for them to get Verlander. I'd love for them to get Carlos Correa. John Mozeliak usually shoots straight, and he's acquired his superstars usually via trade and then extension, whatever it is, or get Arenado to not opt out. If the Cardinals passed on the greatest free agent shortstop market ever, remember, not this past winter, the year before.
Yeah.
And at that point, Masyn Winn is at least 2 years away. Well, of course they're going to pass on it again. They did it the year before. There was a million options the year before. It was Correa again. It was Corey Seager. It was Marcus Semien. Who am I missing? Trevor Story. So, they passed 2 winters ago. They were going to pass again, but just because that's how the Cardinals do business.
Do we got Big James on?
King James.
Oh, boy.
Uh-oh.
King James, what's up, pimpin'?
Hey, what's going on, Cam? How you doing today?
I'm chilling, man.
All right. Yeah, man, I ain't called to give Jim a hard time.
That's debatable.
Man. Not today. No, man, I ain't gonna bust your bumper today, man. We good, man. I just wanted to call in about a couple things, man. Now I don't feel like it's a disappointment if Jordan Walker doesn't come up to the pros. I honestly think it's more of a failure on the front office for that pressure to even be on him to develop so fast. Let that stuff just flow. He should be able to just flow. It shouldn't be no pressure for him to come in and make a huge impact, because I think that's unrealistic. If it happens,
he's 20 years old. I don't see that there's pressure on him. He's 20.
Yeah.
They invited him to spring training. They said, look, he's been like a bullet through the minor league system. He changed positions and he had success. He's 20. But there's going to be adjustments. I don't think there's a lot of pressure on him this year.
No, I was speaking as to somebody said, would it be a failure if he didn't come up through this season? And I don't think it would be a failure.
We agree.
I said at all, though.
We agree.
I didn't say make a huge impact.
No, yeah,
I said at all.
I wouldn't be opposed to it neither. I wouldn't be opposed to that either, because he's 20. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of development there. That could still happen. I think the biggest issue with me, man, is I hear what you're saying with the left-handed bat, man. I mean, the whole outfield is a mess. It's a bunch of question marks. But man, it's the pitching for me, man. I mean, we've had every year we hear about this great farm system, but man, we've produced 3 pitchers, man. Matt Morris, Chris Carpenter, and Wayne Wright. I mean, other than that, man, I always hear about the farm system, but a lot of these guys just don't produce into what they're supposed to be.
Lance
And
Lynn?
when you look at Lance Lynn, Lance Lynn for the duration. I mean, but other than that, you don't have Lance. Yeah, I mean, that's a couple years, but you don't have Lance Lynn.
They also produce some pretty
Carlos
good pitchers.
Martinez, pretty good for a while.
They also produce some
Yeah,
really
he fell
good
off pretty
pitchers
good.
that they never got to the Cardinals or barely did.
Sandy Alcantara.
Yeah, I mean, they've gotten some good pitchers.
But they traded them away.
Right.
Traded them away. The ones and then you get Matt Liberatore, and man, I mean, it don't look like much is there. So I'm just saying, some of these guys, we hear about the farm system, but some of this stuff got to start hitting, man. We give them praise for getting the Arenados and the Goldschmidts, but man, they didn't really give up nothing. And my biggest thing before I go is, why does it seem like every time we're involved in a trade talk or a trade rumor for a big player and it doesn't go right, it's always the team wanted this big haul, but it never seems to be with another team that they get this so-called big haul. The Sean Murphy deal. Man, they didn't get much back from that, but apparently they wanted MLB-ready players and farm system players from us. I just don't buy that, man. I think it's, false reports on our end put out to local media, and I just don't buy that.
You like
man.
Contreras, though? Do you like Contreras? Because they did spend on him.
I like Contreras. I think that's a great move, but I don't. Do you think that puts us over the edge?
No. As I said, I don't look at him. I think it's a great upgrade. I said at the time I want a middle of the order bat.
Kiz is going to be hitting 260.
I wanted
anyway.
a middle of the order bat.
If Kiz hits 260, that's great. I just feel like they got bigger fish to fry than Kisner hitting 260. You got to have arms, man. Like you look at these teams in the NL. That's the best league right now, and every one of those teams that were there last year, they're gonna be right back there, and they all got bulls.
And Liberatore, by the way, was picked up in a trade, so he's not pure farms. And yes, he hasn't.
And they traded a guy that smacked 10 home runs.
I'm with you.
I'm
I'm with you on that. He hasn't developed the way the Cardinals had hoped.
I like the way Jamesy and Jimmy are connected. Jamesy, thank you for the call, big dog. And you need to call anytime. See what's happening here.
Thanks, buddy. By the way, the Rays
sweet?
usually don't lose
See you,
trades.
homie. James.
The Rays usually do not lose trades
Yeah.
with
I like
anybody.
People are just, they got question marks. That's all.
And
Nothing bad. No chirping.
I've said
it's all good.
I totally get the frustration from the fan base that they want to go deeper into the playoffs.
Kat, what's up with Liberatore? It looks like a bust material. The all-knowing expert.
He hadn't been what they had hoped. You know, he supposedly has a really good curveball and a fastball, but he's still young. We'll see what he has. But has he been the guy they hoped they had acquired? No, he has not.
Carlos Martinez was one of the best pitchers in baseball between 2015 and 17. That's a pretty great stretch. Kyle with the big hands, and he certainly does.
And again, a lot of these guys didn't have staying power. Lance Winn was really good for the Cardinals. Michael Wacha was actually pretty dang good for a couple years. Carlos Martinez, pretty dang good for a couple years.
Pretty dang good.
Now, the difference between Wacha and Martinez, Wacha had health issues from the neck down. Martinez had issues from the head up, to be honest.
It's true.
And in terms of stuff, Carlos Martinez might have had the filthiest stuff on the rotation at his prime. His stuff was sick. He just had issues. He had issues.
And the other thing is, look at the Cardinals when they were awesome, from 11 to 15. Most of that team was homegrown, plus you add a couple studs. You add a Holiday, you add a Lance Berkman, in the way that they added Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt. But for the Cardinals to be really good again, they probably have to keep all of their stud prospects. The only reason I say that is because they're not going to spend $40 million on Max Scherzer or Justin Verlander. So for them to get back to multiple World Series, they probably have to have all of the Wachas, and I mean Shelby Miller even didn't work out, but like all those guys probably have to hit for them to be elite because they're not gonna outspend the Mets.
Hey, did the Kings say last night that they should trade Paul Goldschmidt?
He did, which I actually don't think was that irrational. I mean, you're probably not going to get the same type of production as a guy at 36. His value was extremely high, and I think where the Cardinals are situated with some of their players, in particular Gorman, what to do with him, like maybe you move him to first base. I think there were opportunities to dissolve some of the clutter and get an asset maybe in the rotation or something like that, although you probably don't want to trade an everyday player that's the MVP for a pitcher because the value isn't like 1 out of 5 days versus every day. So I don't know. I mean, I said that right as the season ended, and I was surprised that he brought that up yesterday too.
What do you think, Jimmy?
I wouldn't trade him. I wouldn't trade him now. I wouldn't trade him for a pitcher, as Nate just said. Again, the guy who goes out there once every 5 days if he's healthy. You kind of know what you're getting with Goldschmidt. Now, is the age a concern? Yeah, I've said they got that window now, and it's closing because Goldie ain't getting any younger. Neither is Arenado on the other side. But to me, if you want to take the next step, then you make a move now or at the deadline to put you over the top. But I would not start with trading Goldschmidt, no.
No, not trading a Gold Glove first baseman, Sanderson. To even suggest they would trade Goldie is pointless. Never going to happen. Gordon Graceffo, Tim Tink Hentz. Hold on.
You're right. It's Tink Hentz.
Cooper
Jerpy.
Jerpy. Mike McGreevy. The Cardinals have pitchers coming. Jobu.
Tink Hentz is very far away, but the other guys are relatively
right.
close.
But I get the fact, and James is right. You know, a lot of these prospects that have been touted haven't panned out. That happens with every organization. But do they need another pitcher this season? I said I wish they would have hung on to Quintana because an injury to one of the key guys, which happens, could really derail you for a little while.
I wouldn't write off Liberatore just yet either. He has good stuff. He just has to work on his location. He's young. His expectations are always going to early 20s, 21, 22. But his expectations are always going to be ridiculously high because he's a first rounder getting traded with a Rosarena or with the deal.
Yeah.
So he may not reach that level, but he can still be a solid pitcher in the MLB.
And not only that, look, I understand that when you made that deal, me saying what I'm about to say is a letdown. But if Liberatore was a really good bullpen lefty at this point, like the Cardinals need that. If he was a really reliable lefty bullpen weapon, those guys are valuable. He may not be a really good starter in the big leagues.
But I said he's 23.
23.
But he's had a couple of looks now where they've needed him. You know, where it was time for a young guy with all this potential, and he hasn't been able to answer the bell. It doesn't mean he won't ever in the future, but they have identified some things with the way he goes about it that have to improve. And at this point, I think it's safe to say he hadn't lived up to the hype.
Respect to the Kings' legacy, but God, that was hard to listen to. Trading Goldie is a paint huffer take. He didn't even know who Brendan Donovan is. He called him Brendan Rogers, Grandpa's been out of the game too long. Microbiologist Jack. Yeah, but I think he just messed up. He's been in the game a long time.
We've never messed up before.
I don't mess up names, Jimmy. I don't mess up names. He does, I don't. God, I just smacked the mic. Didn't mean to do that.
Somebody hung up.
I didn't mean to do that.
Can you imagine, though, if the Cardinals started the season with Gorman at first base? Like, with all the question marks that people are concerned about, even if you got another starting pitcher, people would freak out.
Yeah.
I mean, it's easy to always rip and, look at the other side, but, I mean, I understand why you want to even discuss moving Goldschmidt, because he's getting up there, and you want to get as much value as you can out of him. I get that.
Yeah.
I just don't think that would be the smartest move at this point.
Even if it was the smartest move, by the way, which I think is a fair argument, also, does that feel like a guy the Cardinals are going to trade? It actually feels like a guy. What do the Cardinals do with players that are good that they really like? They actually do the exact opposite. They give them an extension probably when they shouldn't.
Yeah.
That's what they do with guys like that they like. Matt Carpenter. They give everybody. I'm not saying he's a legacy Cardinal because he wasn't a guy drafted by the Cardinals, but they love Paul Goldschmidt. And he feels like a guy where they give him an extra year or two when he's 38 when they probably shouldn't.
Yeah, I get you on that, man. They're not going to spend huge on one star, but I think the fan base would appreciate more of an effort when players like Carrera value drops. Just like that last caller, the frustration is real, and Wilson will be good, but the Birds stop 2 moves short again, Zachy boy. The Birds.
Yeah,
Birds on the bat.
Yeah, I could see that. I understand that. But, again, I think they did upgrade, a necessary upgrade with Contreras. Some people say they need another starter. I agree, because you never have enough. Will they have enough offense for the whole season? Another bat from the left side would just make me feel better.
Nate, does the cat carry the Cardinals' water in one bucket, or does he have one of those poles so he can balance 2 of them at a time? Timmy Van Gelder.
Like back in the day?
Carry buckets.
Going through the field?
So harsh.
Timmy, geez Louise. There are a couple prospect gurus that have written he may eventually, this is on Winn, he may eventually have higher upside than even Jordan Walker. Also to Nate, the Cardinals haven't had 2 prospects that have been nationally rated as high as Walker and Winn since Tavares or Reyes. That's not the Cardinals' fault when one dies and one can't stay healthy.
But I don't even care. Look, Winn is a legitimate prospect. He is.
Yeah.
If you talk to the guys who have played with him or the coaching staff that works with him, they're saying this guy is an unbelievable athlete who can do so many different things, and he's developing. Does that mean he's surefire all-star every year? Who knows? But if you have a guy who has a huge WAR as your shortstop and another guy who just won a Gold Glove, a utility second baseman, who everyone agrees takes some of the best at-bats in Major League Baseball, yes, I could understand that you're not going to invest in those spots.
And Masyn Winn, we didn't mention, he also stole 43 bases last year.
Because he's a freak athlete.
And it gets back to yesterday's conversation. Is Jordan Walker the bigger prospect? Yes, and he absolutely should be. Why is that? Now, he's very athletic. He has a great arm from the outfield. But here's the difference. It's not difficult to find a right fielder in Major League Baseball. Now, the bat like Jordan Walker has, that's an elite bat. It's very, very, very hard to find a legit shortstop in Major League Baseball that can do it all. And we're not saying he will, but there's a good possibility that Masyn Winn could be that guy.
And then you take a guy like Walker, who's a third baseman, and you say, hey, can you play some outfield? Yeah. And he's so good, you use him in center.
Yeah.
At that age, that tells you something about his athleticism.
And he probably ends up, 3 years from now, he maybe is the first baseman when Goldie leaves. The dude's going to be 6'5", 240.
With quadzillas. Cam, the moon was cool last night. I pointed out to my son how the silver lit up on the outline of the whole thing. What were the 2 planets? That was Jupiter and Venus. It's really pretty, man. No other stars were out, and it was right next to the moon. It was awesome. Some of you city folk can't see the moon that much, but if you're out yonder, it lights up. It was really, really cool, man, if you like that kind of thing. Okay. All right, good Cardinal talk.
Great job.
Even Jamesy was civil. I like that. Now the text line gets a little cray-cray.
The call before he came in really hot, and
really
at the
hot.
end he's like, it's debatable.
I know.
It was funny though.
I like that though. Because
even though it was at your expense,
it was funny.
it was funny. You got to admit that.
Jimmy came in hot.
Well, I try to be nice to all callers because I like people to listen to the show. I try to be nice to the text line because
we love them.
I appreciate their input and I appreciate the fact that they listen. But sometimes it's like over the top.
Oh, yeah, I know. I want to balance. I try to balance it. I want to balance it.
Trust me, it's easier when a team has been bounced from the postseason prematurely for 3 seasons. It's easier to get your pound of flesh and get in on it.
Yeah.
But
Cam.
I always see it the way I see it, regardless of
dude.
my job or any.